Maya Rodriguez had always been different from other girls in her neighborhood. While her classmates spent their afternoons browsing social media and talking about makeup tutorials, Maya could be found in her garage, practicing combinations on a worn punching bag her father had hung from the ceiling beams 3 years ago. The 17-year-old had discovered boxing almost by accident when she accompanied her younger brother Carlos to his first training session at the local community center. What started as mere curiosity had evolved into something much deeper. A passion that consumed her thoughts and shaped her daily routine. The suburbs of Phoenix, Arizona, weren't exactly known for producing female fighters. Most parents in their middle-class neighborhood preferred their daughters to focus on academics, cheerleading, or perhaps tennis at the country club. Maya's mother, Elena, had initially resisted her daughter's interest in what she called a man's sport, but after witnessing the confidence and discipline it brought to Maya's life, she had gradually become supportive. Maya's father, Roberto, had been encouraging from the beginning, having grown up in a rougher part of town where knowing how to defend yourself wasn't optional but necessary for survival. Every morning before school, Maya would wake at 5:30 to run 3 miles through her neighborhood. The early morning air was crisp and clean, carrying the scent of desert flowers and the promise of another scorching Arizona day. Her route took her past sprawling ranch houses with manicured lawns, past the elementary school where she had once played hopscotch during recess, and through the small commercial district where her mother worked as a bank teller. By the time she returned home, showered, and prepared for school, most of her classmates were just rolling out of bed. At Desert Ridge High School, Maya maintained solid grades while managing to stay largely invisible to the social hierarchies that dominated teenage life. She wasn't part of the popular crowd, nor did she belong to any particular clique. Her closest friends were Carlos, who shared her love of combat sports, and Jennifer Kim, a quiet girl who excelled in mathematics and appreciated Maya's straightforward, no-nonsense personality. Maya preferred it this way. Drama and gossip seemed like a waste of energy that could be better spent training or studying. The boxing gym where Maya trained 3 evenings a week was a world away from her suburban high school. Located in a grittier part of Phoenix, Iron Fist Boxing occupied a converted warehouse that smelled of sweat, leather, and determination. The gym's owner, Coach Martinez, was a former professional boxer who had competed in the lightweight division during the 1990s. His weathered face told the story of countless rounds in the ring, but his eyes held a kindness that had drawn Maya in from her very first visit. Coach Martinez treated all his fighters equally, regardless of gender, age, or background. What mattered to him was heart, dedication, and the willingness to push past your comfort zone. Under Coach Martinez's guidance, Maya had developed impressive skills for someone her age. Her footwork was quick and precise, her combinations flowed naturally, and her defensive instincts were sharp. More importantly, she had learned to channel her emotions through her training. When school stress mounted or family tensions arose, Maya found peace in the rhythmic sound of her gloves connecting with the heavy bag. The gym had become her sanctuary, a place where she could be completely herself without judgment or expectation. Maya's typical training session began with 30 minutes of conditioning: jump rope, burpees, mountain climbers, and core work that left her muscles burning and her lungs gasping for air. Then came technical work with Coach Martinez, where they would focus on specific combinations, defensive movements, or ring strategy. The session always concluded with sparring, either with other gym members or working combinations with Coach Martinez holding mitts. Maya had never competed in an official match, but Coach Martinez often said she had the potential to go far if she chose to pursue competitive boxing seriously. The other fighters at Iron Fist had accepted Maya without question. There was Marcus, a college student who trained for amateur competitions; Rosa, a police officer who used boxing for fitness and stress relief; and Tommy, a retired construction worker who still came to the gym 3 times a week despite being in his 60s. They had all watched Maya grow from an awkward beginner into a skilled fighter, and their respect for her abilities was genuine and hard-earned. In this environment, Maya had learned that strength wasn't about size or gender. It was about technique, mental toughness, and the willingness to get back up when you got knocked down. At home, Maya's training regimen continued with a strict nutrition plan that her mother had helped her develop. Elena had researched athletic nutrition extensively and made sure Maya's meals included plenty of lean protein, complex carbohydrates, and fresh vegetables. The family's dinner conversations often revolved around Maya's training progress, upcoming amateur tournaments she might enter, and her long-term goals in the sport. Carlos, now 15 and training seriously himself, looked up to his sister as both a role model and a training partner. Their basement had been converted into a mini gym, complete with a speed bag, resistance bands, and foam mats for stretching. Maya's dedication hadn't gone unnoticed at school, though not always in positive ways. Some classmates found her intensity intimidating, while others simply didn't understand why a girl would choose to spend her free time getting hit in the face. She had learned to ignore the whispered comments and sideways glances, focusing instead on her own goals and the satisfaction that came from constant improvement. Her English teacher, Mrs. Thompson, had once asked her to write an essay about her passion for boxing, and Maya had surprised herself with the depth of emotion that poured onto the page. Boxing, she had written, wasn't about violence or aggression. It was about discipline, respect, and finding strength you didn't know you possessed. The weekends brought longer training sessions and sometimes trips to other gyms for sparring sessions with different partners. Maya particularly enjoyed these opportunities to test her skills against fighters with different styles and experience levels. She had sparred with former Golden Gloves champions, college athletes, and even a few professional fighters who were between training camps. Each session taught her something new about herself and her capabilities. Coach Martinez always emphasized that learning never stopped in boxing. Even world champions continued to refine their technique and discover new aspects of their fighting style. As spring approached during Maya's senior year, she faced important decisions about her future. Several colleges had shown interest in her academic achievements, and she was considering studying sports medicine or exercise physiology. The idea of combining her love of athletics with a career in healthcare appealed to her practical nature. At the same time, Coach Martinez had been encouraging her to consider competing in amateur boxing tournaments, possibly with an eye toward making the Olympic team in a few years. The thought both excited and terrified her. Competition would mean leaving the comfortable environment of her local gym and testing herself against the best young fighters in the country. Maya's parents had always emphasized the importance of education, but they also recognized their daughter's exceptional talent in boxing. Roberto had spoken with several parents whose children had received athletic scholarships, and Elena had researched universities with strong boxing programs. The family understood that Maya's window of opportunity in competitive sports might be limited, while education would provide a foundation for lifelong success. They had decided to support whatever path Maya chose, as long as she approached it with the same dedication she brought to her training. The community center where Maya had first discovered boxing continued to play an important role in her life. She had begun volunteering as an assistant instructor for younger children, sharing the basics of footwork, hand positioning, and most importantly, the mental aspects of the sport. Working with 8- and 9-year-olds reminded her why she had fallen in love with boxing in the first place. The pure joy of movement, the satisfaction of mastering a new technique, and the confidence that came from knowing you could handle whatever challenges life presented. Many of these children came from difficult backgrounds, and Maya tried to provide the same kind of positive mentorship that Coach Martinez had given her. One particular student, a shy 10-year-old named Isabella, reminded Maya of herself at that age. Isabella was small for her age and had been dealing with bullying at school. Her parents hoped that learning some self-defense might help build her confidence and give her tools to handle difficult situations. Maya worked with Isabella on basic stance and movement, but more importantly, she talked with her about believing in yourself and not letting other people's opinions define your worth. Watching Isabella's transformation over several weeks, from a timid girl who barely made eye contact to someone who stood tall and spoke with conviction, reinforced Maya's belief in boxing's power to change lives. The spring weather brought new energy to Maya's training routine. Early morning runs became more enjoyable as temperatures warmed, and desert wildflowers began blooming along her route. She started incorporating hill sprints and interval training to build explosive power and cardiovascular endurance. Coach Martinez had been pushing her harder lately, sensing that she was ready for more advanced techniques and conditioning. Their training sessions had evolved from basic fundamentals to complex combination work and ring generalship, the subtle art of controlling distance, timing, and psychological pressure during a fight. Maya's relationship with her classmates remained cordial but distant. She found their conversations about weekend parties and social drama increasingly irrelevant to her own interests and goals. This wasn't due to any sense of superiority, but rather a natural result of pursuing such different paths. While her peers worried about prom dates and college social scenes, Maya thought about training schedules, nutrition timing, and whether she was mentally ready for competitive boxing. The gap between her world and theirs continued to widen, though she maintained friendships with those who respected her choices and supported her ambitions. Jennifer Kim remained Maya's closest friend at school, partly because she understood the dedication required to excel at something difficult. Jennifer spent her afternoons competing in academic decathlons and working on advanced mathematics problems with the same intensity Maya brought to boxing. They often studied together, finding that their disciplined approaches to their respective passions made them effective study partners. Jennifer had attended several of Maya's training sessions and was always amazed by the transformation her quiet friend underwent when she put on boxing gloves, confident, focused, and completely in her element. As word of Maya's boxing skills slowly spread through school, she noticed a change in how some people interacted with her. A few classmates seemed more respectful, perhaps recognizing that she possessed capabilities they didn't fully understand. Others appeared nervous around her, as if they expected her to solve every disagreement with her fists. Maya found both reactions frustrating, because they were based on misconceptions about what boxing training actually taught. The sport had made her more patient and controlled, not more aggressive. She understood better than most people that real strength meant knowing when not to fight, and that confidence came from preparation and self-knowledge rather than the ability to hurt others. The desert landscape around Phoenix provided a perfect backdrop for Maya's mental preparation and reflection. She often drove to quiet spots in the nearby mountains after particularly intense training sessions, sitting in her car and watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. These moments of solitude helped her process the physical and emotional demands of her training while contemplating her future. The vastness of the desert reminded her that her problems and anxieties, while important to her, were part of a much larger world, full of possibilities and adventures she had yet to discover. Coach Martinez had been dropping hints about an upcoming amateur tournament that would be perfect for Maya's debut in competitive boxing. The event would attract fighters from across the Southwest, including several who had Olympic aspirations. The thought of stepping into a ring with official judges, crowds, and real stakes both thrilled and terrified her. Training in the gym was one thing. You could always stop if you got hurt, take a break if you needed to think, or ask Coach Martinez for advice between rounds. Competition would be different. Just her opponent, and everything she had learned condensed into 3 intense rounds of boxing. The physical demands of her training had transformed Maya's body over the past few years. She was stronger and more athletic than she had ever imagined possible, but more importantly, she had developed the kind of mental toughness that served her well in all areas of life. Difficult exams seemed manageable after enduring brutal conditioning sessions. Peer pressure and social drama felt trivial compared to pushing through exhaustion during sparring. She had learned to embrace discomfort as a necessary part of growth, understanding that the most worthwhile achievements required persistence through challenges that made most people quit. Maya's younger brother Carlos had emerged as her most dedicated training partner and biggest supporter. At 15, he was developing into a skilled fighter himself, though his natural style differed significantly from Maya's. Where Maya relied on speed, timing, and technical precision, Carlos was more of a pressure fighter who used aggression and physical strength to overwhelm opponents. Their sparring sessions had become increasingly competitive, with each sibling pushing the other to improve while maintaining the mutual respect that kept their relationship strong. Their parents often watched these sessions with a mixture of pride and anxiety, amazed by their children's skills but worried about the potential for injury. The local boxing community had begun to take notice of Maya's development. Several former professionals who trained at Iron Fist had commented on her natural ability and work ethic. One former world champion had told Coach Martinez that Maya reminded him of some of the most successful female fighters he had known, not because of any physical similarity, but because of her approach to training and her ability to absorb instruction. These compliments meant more to Maya than any recognition she received at school because they came from people who understood what real accomplishment in boxing required. As her senior year progressed, Maya found herself spending more time thinking about the future and less time worrying about typical teenage concerns. College applications had been submitted, and she was waiting to hear back from several universities with strong academic programs and boxing clubs. The idea of training with new coaches and sparring partners excited her, though she knew she would miss the familiar environment of Iron Fist and Coach Martinez's guidance. Part of growing up, she was learning, meant leaving comfortable situations and testing yourself in new environments that challenged you in unexpected ways. The approaching end of high school brought a sense of urgency to Maya's training. If she was going to compete as an amateur, the next few years would be crucial for her development. Women's boxing had gained significant recognition and support over the past decade, with more scholarship opportunities and media attention than ever before. Maya understood that she was part of a generation that had opportunities previous generations of female fighters could only dream about. This recognition came with responsibility to train hard, compete with honor, and inspire younger girls who might be watching her journey with their own dreams of athletic success. The trouble began on a Tuesday afternoon in late March, when the Arizona sun was particularly unforgiving and tempers ran as hot as the asphalt in the Desert Ridge High School parking lot. Maya had finished her last class of the day and was walking toward her car, earbuds in and mind already focused on the evening's training session at Iron Fist Boxing. She was reviewing the combination sequences Coach Martinez had taught her the previous night when she noticed a commotion near the student parking area that made her pause and pull out her earbuds. 6 students stood in a rough circle around someone Maya couldn't initially see clearly. The group consisted of Brad Morrison, a linebacker on the football team known more for his attitude than his athletic ability. His girlfriend Tiffany Sanders, whose social media presence was legendary among their classmates. Jake Phillips, who had been held back a year and carried himself with the swagger of someone who thought high school was the peak of human achievement. Chloe Winters, whose family's wealth afforded her a sense of entitlement that grated on many students. Marcus Thompson, whose main accomplishment was being Brad's best friend and constant sidekick. And Ashley Rodriguez, who, despite sharing a surname with Maya, came from a completely different social circle and had never acknowledged their possible distant family connection. As Maya moved closer, she realized the target of their attention was Jennifer Kim, her quiet friend who was clutching her mathematics textbook against her chest like a shield. Jennifer's face was flushed with embarrassment and what looked like the beginning of tears, while the Sikh students around her seemed to be enjoying her discomfort immensely. Maya quickened her pace, her protective instincts immediately activated by the sight of her friend in distress. The confrontation had apparently started over something trivial. Jennifer had accidentally bumped into Tiffany while walking to her car, causing Tiffany to drop her expensive designer water bottle. Instead of accepting Jennifer's sincere apology, Tiffany had decided to make a scene, perhaps because she had an audience and felt the need to maintain her social status through intimidation. What should have been a minor incident had escalated into something much uglier, with the 6 students now surrounding Jennifer and making increasingly cruel comments about her appearance, her family's financial situation, and her academic achievements. Maya approached the group with measured steps, her boxing training automatically adjusting her posture and breathing to prepare for potential conflict. Years of sparring had taught her to assess situations quickly and accurately, reading body language and energy levels to determine threat levels and possible outcomes. What she saw concerned her, 6 against 1, with clear intent to humiliate and intimidate rather than resolve any genuine grievance. The dynamic was classic bullying behavior, designed to make the perpetrators feel powerful while causing maximum emotional damage to their target. "Jennifer, you ready to go?" Maya asked calmly, stepping into the circle and positioning herself slightly in front of her friend. Her voice carried no aggression, but there was an unmistakable quality of confidence that caused the 6 students to reassess the situation. Maya's reputation as someone who minded her own business and avoided drama was well known, but so was her dedication to boxing and her general aura of quiet competence. Brad Morrison was the first to respond, his voice carrying the kind of false bravado that often masked insecurity. Well, if it isn't the girl boxer," he said with a smirk that was meant to be intimidating but came across as juvenile. "What are you gonna do, Maya? You gonna fight all of us?" His question was accompanied by laughter from his friends, who seemed to find the idea of a physical confrontation with a girl simultaneously amusing and impossible. Maya's response was calm and measured, reflecting the mental discipline her boxing training had instilled in her. "I'm not looking for any trouble," she said clearly. "Jennifer apologized for an accident. That should be the end of it." She kept her hands relaxed at her sides, her stance balanced but not aggressive, and maintained eye contact with Brad while staying aware of the other 5 students' positions and movements. Tiffany stepped forward, her designer heels clicking on the asphalt as she invaded Maya's personal space in a gesture meant to establish dominance. "Maybe you should mind your own business," she said, her voice rising to ensure nearby students could hear. "This doesn't concern you, and Jennifer needs to learn that actions have consequences." The irony of someone from a privileged background lecturing about consequences wasn't lost on Maya, but she remained focused on diffusing the situation rather than pointing out hypocrisy. The crowd of onlookers had grown as news of the confrontation spread through social media and text messages. Students emerged from the building in nearby parking areas, drawn by the promise of drama that would provide content for their various online platforms. Maya could see phones being raised to record whatever was about to happen, and she knew that anything that occurred in the next few minutes would be preserved and shared across the school's social networks within hours. Jake Phillips, perhaps feeling the need to prove his toughness in front of the growing audience, made the situation worse by stepping closer to Maya and attempting to intimidate her with his size advantage. At 6'2" and roughly 200 pounds, he towered over Maya's 5'6" frame, but his threatening posture only revealed his ignorance about what real fighting involved. Maya had sparred with much larger opponents at the boxing gym and understood that size meant nothing without technique, conditioning, and mental preparation. "You think you're tough because you play around in some gym?" Jake asked, his voice dripping with condescension. "This is the real world, princess. Maybe it's time someone taught you how things actually work around here." His words were meant to sound menacing, but Maya recognized them as the empty threats of someone who had never faced real opposition or consequences for his behavior. Maya's training had taught her to remain calm under pressure, to think clearly when others became emotional, and to recognize when situations were moving beyond verbal resolution. She could see in the body language and facial expressions of the 6 students that they were committed to some kind of confrontation, whether to maintain face in front of their audience or because they genuinely believed they could intimidate her into backing down. What they didn't understand was that years of boxing training had prepared her for exactly this kind of pressure situation. "Listen," Maya said, her voice still calm but carrying a new edge of authority. "Jennifer and I are going to leave now. You can either let that happen peacefully, or you can explain to your parents and the school administration why you decided to assault 2 girls in front of 50 witnesses with cameras." Her words were chosen carefully, making it clear that she understood the legal and social implications of what was happening, while giving the group an opportunity to retreat without losing too much face. Marcus Thompson, apparently feeling left out of the verbal sparring, decided to contribute by making a comment that revealed both his ignorance and his malicious intent. "Girls don't fight," he said with a laugh that was echoed by his companions. "They just scratch and pull hair and cry." "What are you gonna do, Maya? Hit us with your purse?" His comment was met with approval from his friends, who seemed to think they had scored some kind of clever point. The comment about girls not fighting was particularly ironic given Maya's extensive training and experience, but more importantly, it revealed the fundamental misunderstanding that was driving the confrontation. These 6 students had no idea what they were dealing with. They saw a teenage girl and assumed weakness, vulnerability, and inability to defend herself or her friend. Their entire approach was based on stereotypes and assumptions that would prove to be catastrophically wrong. Ashley Rodriguez, who had been mostly quiet during the verbal exchange, suddenly became more aggressive, perhaps feeling peer pressure to prove her loyalty to the group. "Maybe we should teach both of these losers a lesson they won't forget," she said, moving closer to Jennifer in what was clearly a threatening manner. "Some people need to learn their place in the social order around here." Maya's assessment of the situation crystallized in that moment. The 6 students had moved beyond intimidation into clear threatening behavior. with multiple people making statements about teaching lessons and learning places. Jennifer was obviously terrified and had no ability to defend herself against even one attacker, much less 6. The crowd of onlookers was growing larger and more excited, feeding off the drama and encouraging escalation rather than resolution. Most importantly, the 6 aggressors had positioned themselves in a way that blocked both girls' path to their vehicles, making peaceful departure impossible. The boxing training that had shaped Maya's teenage years included extensive education about conflict avoidance, de-escalation techniques, and the legal responsibilities that came with fighting skills. Coach Martinez had repeatedly emphasized that the goal of martial arts training was to avoid fights, not to seek them out, and that physical confrontation should always be a last resort used only when all other options had been exhausted. Maya had internalized these lessons, which was why she had spent several minutes trying to resolve the situation peacefully. However, her training had also prepared her for situations where peaceful resolution became impossible, when faced with multiple attackers threatening herself and someone she cared about, when retreat was blocked and verbal de-escalation had failed, when the aggressors had made their intentions clear and begun moving into attack positions, then self-defense became not just justified but necessary. Maya's years of preparation had given her both the skills to handle such situations and the judgment to know when those skills were required. Brad Morrison made the first physical move, reaching out to grab Maya's shoulder in what was probably intended as an intimidating gesture rather than a serious attack. In his mind, he was likely planning to push her around a bit, establish his dominance, and enjoy her fear and submission. What he didn't realize was that his movement triggered responses that Maya had practiced thousands of times in the boxing gym. The moment his hand made contact with her shoulder, everything changed. Maya's reaction was swift, precise, and devastating in its effectiveness. Years of defensive training had made certain movements automatic. When someone reached for her, her body responded with perfect technique before her conscious mind had time to fully process what was happening. She pivoted on her back foot, creating distance while simultaneously grabbing Brad's extended wrist with her left hand and driving her right elbow into his solar plexus with calculated force. The strike landed exactly where Maya intended, driving the air from Brad's lungs and causing him to double over in pain and surprise. Before he could recover, Maya followed up with a perfectly executed uppercut that caught him under the chin and sent him stumbling backward into his friends. The entire sequence took less than 3 seconds and demonstrated the difference between someone who talked about fighting and someone who had actually trained for it. The reaction from the other 5 students was immediate but uncoordinated. Tiffany screamed something about Maya being crazy, while Jake stepped forward with his fists raised in a position that would have been laughable to anyone with actual fighting experience. Marcus and Ashley moved to flank Maya from different sides, while Chloe began filming the entire confrontation with her phone while shouting encouragement to her friends. Maya's training had covered multiple attacker scenarios extensively. Coach Martinez had drilled her on positioning, movement, and the importance of preventing opponents from surrounding or cornering her. As Jake moved in with a wild haymaker punch, Maya ducked under his swing and drove a hard right cross into his ribs that caused him to gasp and stagger. Before Marcus could grab her from behind, she spun away and created distance, keeping all her remaining opponents in front of her while moving toward an open area of the parking lot. The next few minutes unfolded with a brutal efficiency that shocked everyone present, including Maya herself. Years of training had prepared her technically for this kind of situation, but the emotional reality of actually defending herself against multiple attackers was overwhelming. Adrenaline flooded her system, sharpening her focus while making every sound and movement seem intensely vivid and immediate. Tiffany, apparently believing that her social status provided some kind of protection from consequences, made the mistake of attempting to attack Maya while she was dealing with Marcus. Maya saw the movement from the corner of her eye and responded with a backhand strike that caught Tiffany across the face and sent her stumbling into a parked car. The contact was harder than Maya intended, but in a multiple attacker situation, there was no time for measured responses or careful calibration of force. Ashley and Chloe approached together, apparently thinking that coordinated attack would overwhelm Maya's defenses, What they discovered was that fighting someone with years of training was entirely different from the social confrontations they were accustomed to. Maya's footwork kept her mobile while her defensive skills allowed her to avoid their clumsy attacks while counterpunching with precision that left both girls hurt and confused. The confrontation lasted approximately 15 minutes from beginning to end, though the actual physical fighting was over much more quickly. By the time school security and local police arrived, all 6 of Maya's attackers required medical attention for various injuries, ranging from bruised ribs and black eyes to more serious damage that would require emergency room evaluation. Maya herself was largely uninjured, except for scraped knuckles and the emotional trauma of being forced into a situation she had tried desperately to avoid. The aftermath of the confrontation unfolded with the chaotic intensity of a natural disaster, as emergency sirens wailed across the Desert Ridge High School campus and concerned administrators rushed to manage a situation unlike anything they had encountered in their careers. Maya stood in the center of the parking lot, her hands trembling slightly from adrenaline, while she watched paramedics attend to the 6 students who had forced her into defending herself and Jennifer. The surreal nature of the scene made it difficult for her to fully process what had just occurred. 15 minutes earlier, she had been thinking about boxing combinations and homework assignments, and now she was surrounded by ambulances, police officers, and school officials who seemed as shocked as she felt. Jennifer remained close to Maya's side, her mathematics textbook still clutched against her chest, and her face pale with the residual terror of being surrounded by aggressive classmates. The quiet girl who excelled at solving complex equations had never experienced physical intimidation before, and the trauma of the incident was clearly visible in her shaking hands and wide eyes. Maya felt a protective surge whenever she looked at her friend, remembering that none of this would have happened if Jennifer hadn't been targeted for something as innocent as an accidental bump in the hallway. The crowd of student witnesses had grown to nearly 100 people, drawn by the drama and the opportunity to capture footage that would undoubtedly go viral on social media platforms within hours. Maya could see phones recording from every angle, preserving every moment of the aftermath for analysis and judgment by people who hadn't witnessed the build-up to the confrontation, or understood the circumstances that had made physical defense necessary. The thought of becoming an internet sensation for all the wrong reasons added another layer of anxiety to an already overwhelming situation. Brad Morrison was the first of the 6 to be loaded into an ambulance, his injuries requiring immediate medical attention due to the precision with which Maya's strikes had found their targets. The combination of the elbow strike to his solar plexus and the uppercut to his chin had left him with difficulty breathing and possible concussion symptoms that concerned the emergency medical technicians. As the ambulance doors closed and the vehicle departed for the hospital, Maya felt a complex mixture of regret and justified satisfaction. Regret that the situation had escalated to violence, but satisfaction that someone who had threatened her friend was facing consequences for his actions. Jake Phillips required assistance walking to his ambulance, the result of the rib shots Maya had delivered when he attempted to grab her during the melee. His breathing was labored and shallow, suggesting possible internal injuries that would require thorough examination and monitoring. The irony of his earlier comments about teaching lessons wasn't lost on the witnessing students, many of whom had heard his threats and seen his aggressive approach, before Maya's defensive response left him struggling to remain upright. Tiffany Sanders sat in the back of her ambulance with an ice pack pressed against her face, the result of Maya's defensive strike when Tiffany had attempted to attack her from behind. The social media influencer who had started the entire confrontation over a dropped water bottle now faced the prospect of facial bruising that would require careful makeup application for weeks to come. Her designer clothing was disheveled and torn, a stark contrast to the carefully curated image she maintained on her various online platforms. Marcus Thompson and Ashley Rodriguez were treated for various bruises and minor injuries sustained during their unsuccessful attempts to overwhelm Maya with coordinated attacks. Both students seemed stunned by the outcome of the confrontation, having apparently expected their numerical advantage to guarantee victory over a single opponent. The reality of facing someone with actual fighting skills had proven far different from their assumptions about how physical confrontations unfolded. Chloe Winters, who had attempted to continue filming even while participating in the attack, suffered injuries to her hands and arms when Maya's defensive movements had knocked her expensive phone from her grasp and sent her tumbling into nearby vehicles. The wealthy student's sense of entitlement had provided no protection against the consequences of her decision to participate in what she had probably viewed as entertaining drama rather than serious assault. Principal Davidson arrived at the scene as the last ambulance departed, his usually composed demeanor replaced by visible stress and concern. The veteran administrator had dealt with typical teenage conflicts throughout his career, but nothing had prepared him for managing the aftermath of 6 students requiring hospitalization following a confrontation with a single classmate. The legal, medical, and public relations implications of the incident would require careful navigation to protect both the school's reputation and the students involved. Detective Sarah Chen of the Phoenix Police Department had been assigned to investigate the incident, her extensive experience with assault cases providing the expertise needed to untangle the complex web of events that had led to multiple hospitalizations. As she interviewed witnesses and reviewed cell phone footage, a clear picture emerged of 6 students surrounding and threatening 2 others, followed by escalating physical aggression that triggered a devastating defensive response from someone with professional-level fighting skills. Maya's parents arrived at the school within 30 minutes of receiving the emergency phone call, their faces reflecting a mixture of worry, pride, and concern for their daughter's well-being. Roberto Rodriguez immediately sought out Detective Chen to understand the legal implications of the situation, while Elena focused on providing emotional support to Maya and Jennifer. The family had always emphasized the importance of standing up to bullies, but they had never imagined their daughter would face a situation requiring such dramatic self-defense measures. Coach Martinez received word of the incident through a text message from Carlos, who had heard about it from classmates at his middle school. The experienced boxing trainer immediately drove to Desert Ridge High School, knowing that Maya would need someone who understood both the technical aspects of what had occurred and the emotional complexity of being forced to use fighting skills in a real-world conflict situation. His presence provided Maya with a sense of stability during the chaos surrounding the investigation and medical responses. The cell phone footage captured by numerous students provided clear documentation of the entire confrontation, from the initial verbal threats through the escalating physical aggression that forced Maya to defend herself and her friend. Detective Chen reviewed hours of video from multiple angles, finding consistent evidence that the 6 injured students had initiated both the verbal and physical confrontation, while Maya had repeatedly attempted to de-escalate the situation before defending herself against what any reasonable person would consider assault. Dr. Williams, the emergency room physician who treated the 6 injured students, was amazed by the precision and effectiveness of Maya's defensive strikes. Each injury appeared to be the result of specific techniques designed to disable rather than cause permanent damage, suggesting extensive training and remarkable restraint under extreme pressure. The doctor's report would note that while the injuries were significant enough to require medical attention, they could have been far worse if Maya had intended to cause serious harm rather than simply defend herself. Maya's statement to Detective Chen was clear and consistent, describing her attempts to avoid confrontation, her efforts to de-escalate the situation verbally, and her final decision to defend herself when physical attack became unavoidable. The 17-year-old demonstrated remarkable composure as she detailed the events, though occasional tremors in her voice revealed the emotional toll of being forced to hurt other people, even in self-defense. Jennifer's testimony corroborated Maya's account while providing additional context about the initial confrontation and the escalating threats that had made peaceful resolution impossible. The quiet mathematics student described feeling genuinely afraid for her safety when surrounded by 6 aggressive classmates, and her gratitude toward Maya for intervening was evident in every word of her statement. The witness statements from other students painted a consistent picture of 6 individuals surrounding and threatening 2 others, with escalating verbal aggression followed by physical contact that triggered an immediate and overwhelming defensive response. Several witnesses specifically mentioned hearing threats about teaching lessons and learning places, language that clearly indicated intent to assault rather than simply intimidate. School administrators faced the complex challenge of responding to an incident that involved both clear bullying behavior and dramatic physical consequences that had resulted in multiple hospitalizations. The 6 students who had initiated the confrontation faced serious disciplinary action and possible criminal charges, while Maya's actions appeared to be justified self-defense under Arizona law. The incident would require careful investigation to ensure that appropriate consequences were applied while protecting the rights of all students involved. Local news stations began arriving at the school as word of the incident spread through social media and police scanner monitoring. The story of 6 students hospitalized following a confrontation with a single female classmate generated immediate interest from reporters seeking dramatic content for their evening broadcasts. Principal Davidson worked with the district's public relations team to manage media access while protecting the privacy of the students involved. Maya's extended family began arriving at the school as news of the incident spread through their community network. Aunts, uncles, and cousins who had watched her grow up and supported her boxing training gathered to provide emotional support and ensure that she understood she had done nothing wrong in defending herself and her friend. The Rodriguez family's strong cultural values regarding protecting family and standing up to injustice were evident in their unified response to the situation. The boxing community at Iron Fist Gym rallied around Maya as news of the incident reached Coach Martinez's network of fighters and trainers. Experienced boxers who had competed professionally understood both the technical skill required to defeat 6 opponents and the emotional difficulty of being forced to use those skills against untrained civilians. Their support provided Maya with perspective from people who understood exactly what she had experienced and why her response had been both appropriate and necessary. Social media responses to cell phone footage of the incident ranged from amazement at Maya's fighting skills to debates about appropriate responses to bullying and the effectiveness of school anti-bullying policies. Videos of the confrontation accumulated hundreds of thousands of views within hours, making Maya an inadvertent viral sensation whose story sparked discussions about gender stereotypes, self-defense rights, and the consequences of aggressive behavior. The 6 injured students faced a lengthy recovery process that would extend far beyond their physical healing. Brad Morrison's concussion required careful monitoring and would prevent him from participating in football activities for the remainder of the school year. Jake Phillips' rib injuries would require several weeks of limited physical activity and careful pain management. Tiffany Sanders' facial bruising would serve as a visible reminder of the incident for weeks to come, potentially affecting her social media presence and self-image. Legal experts who reviewed footage of the incident unanimously agreed that Maya's actions constituted clear self-defense under Arizona law, as she had been physically attacked by multiple assailants after attempting to de-escalate the situation verbally. The disparity in fighting skills between Maya and her attackers, while dramatic in its outcome, did not change the fundamental legal reality that she had been forced to defend herself against unprovoked assault. As evening approached and the immediate crisis management concluded, Maya found herself emotionally and physically drained by the events of the afternoon. The adrenaline that had carried her through the confrontation and its immediate aftermath began to subside, leaving her with a profound sense of exhaustion and a need to process what had occurred. Coach Martinez drove her home, providing quiet support and understanding from someone who had experienced the complex emotions that followed real fighting situations. The incident would mark a turning point in Maya's life, transforming her from a relatively unknown student into a local celebrity whose story would be discussed and analyzed for months to come. More importantly, it would test her character and values in ways that no training session could have prepared her for, forcing her to confront the reality that sometimes doing the right thing required accepting consequences that extended far beyond the immediate situation. That night, as Maya lay in her bed reviewing the events of the afternoon, she understood that her life had changed forever. The skills that Coach Martinez had taught her for self-improvement and personal confidence had been tested in the most dramatic way possible, proving their value while also revealing the heavy responsibility that came with possessing such capabilities. Tomorrow would bring new challenges as she navigated the aftermath of defending herself and her friend against 6 classmates who had learned the hard way that their assumptions about girls who don't fight were catastrophically wrong. The following morning brought a media circus unlike anything Desert Ridge High School had ever experienced. With news vans lined up along the street and reporters stationed at every entrance seeking interviews with students who had witnessed the previous day's confrontation. Maya arrived at school with her parents, having spent the night processing the emotional weight of defending herself against 6 classmates while trying to understand how her life had changed so dramatically in 15 minutes of chaos and adrenaline. Principal Davidson had implemented enhanced security measures overnight, with additional school resource officers and administrative staff positioned throughout the campus to manage the disruption caused by media attention and the intense student interest in Maya's story. The hallways buzzed with conversations about the incident, as cell phone footage continued circulating on social media platforms, and students shared their own interpretations of what had occurred in the parking lot. Maya's first period English class was surreal in its normalcy, as Mrs. Thompson attempted to conduct a discussion about character development in their current novel, while students struggled to focus on literature, when one of their classmates had become a local celebrity overnight. The teacher, who had watched Maya's growth as a student and person over several years, offered supportive glances and gentle encouragement while maintaining the classroom environment Maya needed for some semblance of routine. During lunch period, Maya found herself surrounded by classmates who had never spoken to her before, each seeking first-hand details about the confrontation and her boxing background. The attention was overwhelming for someone who had always preferred to remain in the background, and she quickly retreated to the library where Jennifer was waiting with a quiet corner table and understanding silence about the surreal nature of their new reality. The 6 students who had attacked Maya remained hospitalized or at home recovering from their injuries, creating a strange atmosphere where their absence dominated conversations more than their presence ever had. Brad Morrison's football teammates struggled to reconcile their image of their aggressive teammate with reports that he had been defeated so decisively by a girl they had barely noticed before yesterday. The cognitive dissonance was evident in their subdued behavior and confused discussions about what had really happened. Detective Chen returned to the school that afternoon to complete her investigation, interviewing additional witnesses and reviewing security camera footage that corroborated the cell phone videos captured by students. Her preliminary report indicated clear evidence of self-defense, noting Maya's attempts to de-escalate the situation and the sustained aggressive behavior of the 6 students who had initiated both verbal and physical confrontation. Coach Martinez arrived during Maya's free period, having canceled his afternoon training sessions to provide support and guidance during what he recognized as a critical moment in her development, both as a fighter and as a person. The experienced trainer understood that Maya was struggling with the emotional complexity of using her skills in a real-world situation, particularly one that had resulted in serious injuries to multiple opponents. "How are you holding up?" Coach Martinez asked as they sat in his truck outside the school, away from the curious stares and constant questions that had followed Maya throughout the day. His weathered face reflected genuine concern for his students' emotional well-being, understanding that winning a fight could sometimes feel worse than losing one when it involved hurting people who were ultimately just misguided teenagers. Maya's response revealed the depth of her internal conflict about the previous day's events. "I keep thinking about whether I could have done something different," she said quietly. "Maybe if I had just walked away when I first saw them bothering Jennifer, none of this would have happened. Now, 6 people are in the hospital because of me, and everyone at school is looking at me like I'm some kind of monster or hero, and I don't feel like either one." The conversation that followed would prove crucial in Maya's ability to process the incident and move forward with her life. Coach Martinez shared stories from his own fighting career about situations where he had been forced to defend himself outside the ring, emphasizing that the guilt and uncertainty she was experiencing were normal responses for someone with a conscience who had been forced into violence as a last resort. "The hardest part about learning to fight," Coach Martinez explained, "isn't developing the physical skills or even the mental toughness to compete. It's learning to live with the responsibility that comes with those skills, and understanding that sometimes protecting innocent people requires accepting consequences that feel unfair or overwhelming." His words resonated with Maya's own struggle to reconcile her peaceful nature with the reality of what she had been forced to do. That evening, the Rodriguez family gathered for dinner, with extended relatives and family friends who had come to show their support for Maya and to better understand the situation she had faced. The conversation around the dinner table reflected the complex cultural dynamics of a community that valued both peaceful conflict resolution and the obligation to protect vulnerable people from aggression and intimidation. Maya's grandmother, Elena Rodriguez, shared stories about her own youth in a rougher neighborhood where the ability to defend oneself was essential for survival. The elderly woman's perspective provided historical context for Maya's situation, helping her understand that the skills Coach Martinez had taught her were part of a larger tradition of self-reliance and community protection that stretched back generations. Local news coverage that evening featured interviews with law enforcement officials, school administrators, and legal experts who unanimously supported Maya's right to defend herself and Jennifer against multiple attackers. The consensus among professionals was that her response had been both legally justified and remarkably restrained, given that someone with her training could have inflicted far more serious damage if her intent had been malicious rather than defensive. Social media reactions to the incident continued evolving as more details emerged about the circumstances leading to the confrontation. Initial posts focusing on the dramatic nature of 6 hospitalizations gradually gave way to more thoughtful discussions about bullying, self-defense rights, and the stereotypes that had led 6 students to dramatically underestimate their intended victims' capabilities. The parents of the 6 injured students faced their own complex emotional responses to the incident, ranging from anger at Maya for injuring their children to recognition that their own kids had initiated the confrontation through aggressive and threatening behavior. Several families struggled with the cognitive dissonance between their children's claims of innocence and the overwhelming video evidence showing clear bullying and assault. Dr. Williams provided updates on the injured students' conditions, noting that while their injuries were significant enough to require ongoing medical attention, none were life-threatening or likely to cause permanent damage. Brad Morrison's concussion symptoms were improving, though he would require several weeks of cognitive rest and monitoring. Jake Phillips' rib injuries were healing well, though he would need to avoid physical activity for the remainder of the school year. Tiffany Sanders' facial bruising was extensive, but would heal completely within a few weeks, though the psychological impact of losing a confrontation she had initiated might last much longer. Marcus Thompson and Ashley Rodriguez were recovering from various bruises and minor injuries, while Chloe Winters faced the additional embarrassment of having her expensive phone destroyed during the altercation she had helped precipitate. The legal consequences for the 6 students began taking shape as Detective Chen completed her investigation and presented her findings to the district attorney's office. The overwhelming evidence of their aggressive behavior, combined with witness testimony about verbal threats and physical intimidation, supported charges ranging from assault to criminal threatening. Their status as juveniles would affect sentencing, but all 6 faced serious legal consequences for their actions. School disciplinary proceedings moved forward in parallel with the criminal investigation, as administrators reviewed evidence and prepared recommendations for the school board's consideration. The students who had initiated the confrontation faced potential suspension or expulsion, while Maya's actions were being reviewed under the school's self-defense policies and anti-bullying procedures. Maya's academic performance remained strong despite the emotional toll of the incident and the constant media attention surrounding her story. Her teachers noted that she continued completing assignments and participating in class discussions, though she seemed more withdrawn than usual and appeared to be struggling with the unwanted celebrity status that had resulted from defending herself and her friend. The boxing community's response to Maya's story was overwhelmingly supportive, with former professionals and current trainers praising both her technical skills and her restraint in a dangerous situation. Several prominent figures in women's boxing reached out to offer support and mentorship, recognizing that Maya possessed both the physical abilities and mental character that could translate into competitive success if she chose to pursue that path. College recruiters who had previously shown interest in Maya's academic achievements now had additional information about her character and capabilities under pressure. Several universities with strong athletic programs reached out to discuss scholarship opportunities that would allow her to continue her education while developing her boxing skills at the collegiate level. Jennifer Kim's recovery from the trauma of being surrounded and threatened by 6 classmates proved more challenging than the physical injuries sustained by Maya's attackers. The quiet mathematics student struggled with anxiety about returning to normal school routines, and her family sought counseling support to help her process the experience of being targeted for harassment. Maya's relationship with her classmates became more complex as word of her boxing background spread throughout the school community. Some students approached her with new respect, recognizing that her quiet demeanor had concealed remarkable capabilities. Others seemed nervous or intimidated, apparently concerned that any disagreement might result in physical confrontation with someone whose skills had been so dramatically demonstrated. The incident sparked broader discussions about school safety, anti-bullying policies, and the effectiveness of traditional approaches to teenage conflict resolution. Education experts noted that Maya's situation highlighted the limitations of zero-tolerance policies that failed to distinguish between aggression and self-defense, potentially punishing victims who successfully defended themselves against multiple attackers. Women's rights advocates embraced Maya's story as an example of female empowerment and the importance of self-defense training for young women. Her success in defending herself and her friend against 6 attackers challenged traditional gender stereotypes, while demonstrating the value of martial arts training for developing confidence and practical skills. Local law enforcement officials used the incident as a teaching moment about the legal concepts surrounding self-defense, emphasizing that the right to protect oneself from unprovoked attack was fundamental under Arizona law. They noted that Maya's actions met all the criteria for justified self-defense. She had attempted to avoid confrontation, had been physically attacked by multiple assailants, and had used only the force necessary to protect herself and her friend. As the week progressed, Maya found herself at the center of conversations about topics ranging from gender equality to martial arts training to the responsibility that comes with possessing potentially dangerous skills. Her story had transcended the original incident to become a catalyst for broader discussions about bullying, self-defense, and the assumptions people make about others based on appearance and stereotypes. The transformation in Maya's daily life was profound and permanent, as she navigated the transition from anonymous student to reluctant local celebrity whose story would be discussed and analyzed for years to come. The incident had revealed aspects of her character and capabilities that even she hadn't fully understood, while forcing her to confront the complex emotions that come with successfully defending yourself when peaceful resolution proves impossible. That Friday evening, as Maya sat in the Iron Fist boxing gym going through her usual training routine, she reflected on how much her life had changed in just 4 days. The familiar sounds and smells of the gym provided comfort and normalcy during a week that had turned her world upside down. Coach Martinez worked with her on technical drills, but their conversation focused more on emotional processing and mental preparation for whatever challenges lay ahead. The 6 students who had mocked her with claims that girls don't fight were still dealing with the physical and legal consequences of their catastrophic miscalculation. Their assumption that numerical advantage would overcome skill and training had proven disastrously wrong, leaving them to face not only their injuries but also the humiliation of having their aggressive behavior exposed and condemned by their community. Maya understood that her story would follow her for the rest of her life, becoming part of her identity in ways she was still learning to accept. The girl who had just wanted to train quietly and protect her friend had become an inadvertent symbol of female empowerment and self-defense rights, a role she never sought but now felt obligated to fulfill with the same integrity she brought to everything else in her life. 6 months after the incident that changed everything, Maya Rodriguez stood at the entrance of the University of Arizona campus, her boxing gear bag slung over her shoulder, an acceptance letter to their sports medicine program secured in her backpack. The summer had brought significant changes to her life, including a full scholarship that combined academic achievement with recognition of her unique character and life experiences. The girl who had once trained quietly in her garage had become a symbol of self-defense rights and female empowerment, though she still struggled with the unwanted celebrity that had resulted from 15 minutes of defending herself and her friend. The 6 students who had mocked her ability to fight had each followed different paths in dealing with the consequences of their actions. Brad Morrison never returned to Desert Ridge High School, instead completing his senior year through online coursework while undergoing counseling to address the anger management issues that had contributed to his aggressive behavior. His football scholarship to a regional university had been withdrawn when video footage of the incident reached college recruiters, forcing him to reconsider his future plans entirely. Jake Phillips faced criminal charges that resulted in community service and mandatory anger management classes, along with a civil lawsuit filed by Maya's family seeking compensation for emotional distress and legal expenses. The young man who had towered over Maya while making threats about teaching her lessons now understood the legal and financial consequences that came with attempting to intimidate someone who possessed the skills and character to defend herself effectively. Tiffany Sanders discovered that social media fame could cut both ways, as her role in initiating the confrontation made her a target for online criticism and analysis that extended far beyond her local community. The influencer who had started everything over a dropped water bottle now faced constant reminders of her poor judgment, as screenshots and videos of the incident continued circulating on platforms where she had once enjoyed only positive attention and validation. Marcus Thompson and Ashley Rodriguez both transferred to different schools to escape the ongoing attention and judgment they faced from classmates who had witnessed their participation in the failed assault. The experience of being decisively defeated by someone they had viewed as an easy target forced both students to confront their own assumptions about strength, courage, and the consequences of following charismatic leaders into situations they didn't fully understand. Chloe Winters faced the additional burden of having her family's wealth become part of the public narrative surrounding the incident, as media coverage highlighted the contrast between her privileged background and her participation in bullying behavior. Her parents' attempts to minimize the situation through expensive legal representation only drew more attention to their daughter's role in the confrontation that had resulted in 6 hospitalizations. Detective Chen's final report had cleared Maya of any wrongdoing while recommending prosecution for the 6 students who had initiated the assault. The thorough investigation, supported by extensive video evidence and witness testimony, established a clear legal precedent for self-defense rights in cases involving multiple attackers and trained defenders. Maya's case became a reference point for law enforcement training programs discussing appropriate responses to schoolyard conflicts. The legal aftermath extended through the spring and summer as civil lawsuits and criminal proceedings worked their way through the judicial system. Maya's family received financial compensation for legal expenses and emotional distress, while the 6 families faced significant costs related to medical bills, legal representation, and civil judgments. The economic consequences of 15 minutes of aggressive behavior would affect these families for years to come. Coach Martinez had used Maya's story as a teaching tool for his other students, emphasizing the responsibility that came with fighting skills and the importance of exhausting peaceful options before resorting to physical defense. The incident had attracted new students to Iron Fist boxing, including several young women inspired by Maya's example and seeking similar confidence and capabilities for their own protection. The media attention surrounding Maya's story had evolved from sensational coverage of the initial incident to more thoughtful analysis of bullying, self-defense, and the stereotypes that had contributed to her attacker's catastrophic miscalculation. Documentary filmmakers had approached the Rodriguez family about telling Maya's story, though they had declined most offers in favor of maintaining some privacy during her transition to college life. Women's rights organizations had embraced Maya as a role model, inviting her to speak at events about self-defense, confidence building, and challenging gender stereotypes. While she appreciated the support, Maya remained uncomfortable with the attention and preferred focusing on her studies and training rather than becoming a professional advocate for causes she supported but hadn't chosen to represent publicly. The boxing community's response had been overwhelmingly positive, with several professional fighters reaching out to offer training opportunities and mentorship. Maya's technique during the confrontation had impressed experts who recognized the precision, restraint, and tactical awareness she had demonstrated under extreme pressure. Offers to train at elite facilities and compete at national levels reflected the sport's recognition of her exceptional abilities. Maya's relationship with her classmates at Desert Ridge High School had remained complex through her final months of senior year. Some students approached her with genuine respect and admiration, recognizing her courage in defending herself and her friend against overwhelming odds. Others seemed nervous or intimidated, apparently believing that her fighting skills made her dangerous, rather than understanding that her training had actually made her more controlled and peaceful. Jennifer Kim had recovered from the trauma of being surrounded and threatened by 6 aggressive classmates, though the experience had motivated her to begin taking self-defense classes herself. The quiet mathematics student credited Maya with saving her from serious physical harm and had become one of her most loyal supporters during the difficult months following the incident. The incident had sparked broader changes at Desert Ridge High School, including enhanced anti-bullying programs, improved security measures, and mandatory conflict resolution training for all students. Administrative recognition that traditional approaches had failed to prevent a situation that escalated to multiple hospitalizations led to comprehensive policy reviews and implementation of more effective intervention strategies. Maya's parents had handled the media attention and legal complexities with remarkable grace, protecting their daughter's privacy while ensuring that her story was told accurately and completely. Roberto Rodriguez had become an advocate for self-defense training in schools, while Elena Rodriguez had counseled other parents dealing with bullying situations affecting their children. The University of Arizona's boxing program had recruited Maya based on her demonstrated abilities, character under pressure, and potential for competitive success at the collegiate level. Coach Sarah Mitchell, a former Olympic boxer, had reviewed footage of the incident and been impressed by Maya's technical skills, tactical awareness, and remarkable restraint in a dangerous situation involving multiple attackers. Maya's academic goals remained focused on sports medicine and exercise physiology, fields that would allow her to combine her love of athletics with healthcare career aspirations. The scholarship that made her education possible reflected recognition of both her academic achievements and the unique perspective she could bring to programs dealing with athletic training and injury prevention. The transition to college represented a fresh start for Maya, though she understood that her story would follow her throughout her life. The incident had revealed aspects of her character and capabilities that even she hadn't fully understood, while teaching her valuable lessons about responsibility, judgment, and the complex emotions that come with successfully defending yourself when peaceful resolution becomes impossible. As Maya unpacked her belongings in her dormitory room, she reflected on how much she had learned about herself and others during the months following the confrontation. The experience had been traumatic and life-changing, but it had also confirmed her belief in standing up for vulnerable people and refusing to accept intimidation or aggression as acceptable behavior. Her roommate, Sandra, was a pre-med student from California who had heard about Maya's story through social media but approached their living arrangement with curiosity rather than judgment. The conversation that followed helped Maya realize that her experience, while unique in its dramatic outcome, reflected universal themes about courage, integrity, and the responsibility to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. The University of Arizona campus provided an environment where Maya could continue developing her boxing skills while pursuing academic goals that would prepare her for a healthcare career. The boxing program's emphasis on discipline, technique, and mental preparation aligned perfectly with her existing training philosophy, while the university's strong academic reputation offered opportunities for intellectual growth and professional development. Coach Mitchell's training methods proved to be an excellent match for Maya's learning style and competitive aspirations. The former Olympic athlete understood both the technical demands of high-level boxing and the psychological challenges faced by fighters who had been forced to use their skills in real-world confrontations. Her mentorship would prove crucial in helping Maya channel her experiences into competitive success. Maya's first collegiate boxing match took place in October, drawing significant media attention due to her background and the story that had made her a national figure. The opponent, an experienced fighter from Arizona State University, had prepared extensively for the match, but discovered that facing someone with Maya's combination of technical skills and mental toughness was unlike anything she had encountered before. The bout lasted 3 rounds, with Maya demonstrating the same precision, tactical awareness, and controlled aggression that had served her so well during the parking lot confrontation. Her victory was decisive but respectful, reflecting the sportsmanship and character that had impressed coaches and opponents throughout her development as a fighter. After the match, Maya was approached by reporters seeking comments about her transition from defending herself against bullies to competing in organized athletics. Her response reflected the maturity and perspective she had gained through her experiences. Fighting should always be a last resort, but when someone threatens innocent people, you have to be prepared to stand up and protect them. Boxing taught me how to do that effectively, but more importantly, it taught me when fighting is necessary and when it isn't. The 6 students who had once mocked the idea that girls don't fight were dealing with their own transitions to adult life, carrying the physical and emotional scars of their encounter with someone whose capabilities they had catastrophically underestimated. Their experience had become a cautionary tale shared in anti-bullying programs and conflict resolution training sessions across the country. Maya's story continued inspiring young women to pursue self-defense training and challenge stereotypes about female capabilities in physical confrontations. Martial arts schools reported increased enrollment among female students, specifically citing Maya's example as motivation for learning skills that could protect them and others in dangerous situations. The broader impact of Maya's story extended beyond individual inspiration to influence discussions about school safety, self-defense rights, and the effectiveness of traditional approaches to teenage conflict resolution. Education experts noted that her situation had highlighted important gaps in existing policies and procedures for protecting students from aggressive behavior. Legal scholars continued analyzing Maya's case as a clear example of justified self-defense involving trained fighters and multiple attackers. The precedent established by Detective Chen's investigation and the subsequent legal proceedings had influenced law enforcement training programs and prosecutorial guidelines for similar situations. As Maya completed her first semester at the University of Arizona, she maintained regular contact with Coach Martinez, whose mentorship had been crucial in developing both her fighting skills and her character. Their conversations focused on her competitive progress and academic achievements, but also on the ongoing emotional processing required to integrate her dramatic experiences into a normal, productive life. The transformation from quiet high school student to reluctant public figure had taught Maya valuable lessons about leadership, responsibility, and the power of standing up for what's right even when the consequences are uncertain and potentially overwhelming. Her story would continue inspiring others, while serving as a reminder that courage and preparation could overcome seemingly impossible odds. Maya Rodriguez had learned that girls definitely could fight when necessary, and that sometimes the most important victories came not from defeating opponents in organized competition, but from protecting innocent people when peaceful solutions failed, and physical defense became the only option available. Her legacy would extend far beyond the parking lot confrontation that changed her life, inspiring countless others to develop the skills, courage, and judgment needed to protect themselves and those they cared about.